If I say the name Dreyfus, I'm pretty sure I know exactly where your mind goes.
Oh, absolutely.
You're thinking France, late 19th century.
Yeah.
You're thinking of a Jewish officer, wrongly accused of treason, public humiliation, Devil's Island.
Right. Alfred Dreyfus. It's kind of the gold standard for miscarriages of justice. It tore France apart, sparked riots, got intellectuals like Émile Zola involved.
And it essentially launched the modern Zionist movement. It's a story everyone thinks they know.
Exactly.
Okay, but what if I told you that there was another Dreyfus? A case that happened almost a decade before the French one. A story that took place in a completely different empire, with a man who suffered in prison 4 times longer than Alfred Dreyfus ever did.
It's a story that's been almost entirely erased from our collective memory, which is just tragic given the scale of the injustice. We're talking about a man whose life was just dismantled by a system that was, well, rotten.
Today we are heading east. We are leaving the boulevards of Paris and traveling to the complex, crumbling world of the Ottoman Empire, modern-day Turkey. We're uncovering the story of Dr. Yosef Efendi Carmona.
Yes.
And I want to be very clear right from the jump. Everything we're discussing today, this entire deep dive, is based on the incredible archival research of historian and Professor Reuven Feingold from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem.
Professor Feingold really did the heavy lifting here. I mean, he went into the archives and just excavated this entire story. Without his work, Dr. Carmona would just be a name on a dusty ledger.
So he lets us see the whole picture.
He does. Not just the man, but the entire legal and social machinery of the Ottoman Empire at the time.
So let's set the time machine. It's 1886. We're in Adrianople, Turkey. It's a major city, a hub of culture, military power.
Oh, yeah?
And we're zooming in on Dr. Yosef Efendi Carmona. Who is this guy?
Well, just listen to the name, Yosef Efendi Carmona. That title, Effendi, it tells you a lot.
It's a sign of status, right?
It implies education, status, respect. He's a Jewish doctor serving in the Ottoman army.
And in 1886, it's a pretty good spot to be in, isn't it?
Absolutely. He's a young man. He's risen through the ranks to a position of prestige. He's trusted with the health of the Sultan's soldiers. I mean, by all accounts, he has this brilliant career stretching out in front of him.
A real success story.
A success story of the integration of Jews into the Ottoman civil service until the incident.
And this plays out like the opening scene of a mystery novel.
It really does. So Dr. Carmona is stationed at a military barracks. It's a normal day, routine stuff. And then suddenly 5 Turkish soldiers just drop dead.
Just like that. No warning.
Just like that. It happens fast. And it becomes clear very quickly that this isn't a disease outbreak. It's poisoning.
Oh, wow.
Now, you have to imagine the chaos. 5 soldiers dead on a military base. The command is panicked. They need answers. And, more importantly, they need someone to blame.
Today, you'd have forensics. You'd test the food, check the supply chain.
But this is the Ottoman Empire in 1886. Forensic science is barely even a concept. The investigation is murky, to say the least. But the finger gets pointed almost immediately.
At Dr. Carmona.
At Dr. Carmona. And here's the twist. It's not the government swooping in at first. It's his own colleagues.
This part is wild. It's not a random accusation.
No. 2 fellow doctors, both of Turkish origin, they denounce him. They explicitly accuse him of being responsible for the deaths.
Did the sources give us a why? I mean, did they have any proof?
0 physical evidence linking him to the poison. The research suggests this was, well, it was professional jealousy, pure and simple. Or maybe personal animosity.
Oh, he was too good at his job.
Maybe he was rising too fast. Maybe he was too skilled. Who knows for sure? But these 2 colleagues decided to weaponize the situation. They pointed the finger. And in that kind of environment, an accusation was halfway to a conviction.
So he's arrested. And this isn't a civilian matter.
No, he's military personnel. He's arrested, dragged out of Adrianople, and taken to a military court in Constantinople. And this trial, well, calling it a trial is being generous.
It was a kangaroo court.
Essentially, Carmona stands there, and he claims his innocence categorically. He denies it over and over. I did not do this. I'm a healer, not a killer. But the court isn't listening. They hold him criminally responsible.
In the sentence.
Life imprisonment.
Wow.
But the military wasn't satisfied with just locking him up. They needed to destroy him first. Before he was sent to prison, they subjected him to a degradation ceremony.
I want to pause on this because the description is just chilling. It's not just paperwork. It's a ritual.
It's theatrical cruelty. They bring him out in front of his peers, the men he served with, and piece by piece, they strip him of his identity. They rip the epaulets off his shoulders. They tear the buttons from his uniform.
And they take his military decorations.
Everything. It's a way of saying, you are no longer one of us. You are being publicly erased.
A social death.
Precisely. And here's where the historical echo helps us understand. This happened in 1886. 8 years later, in France, Alfred Dreyfus went through this exact same ritual.
The breaking of the sword, the ripping of the insignia.
The parallels are almost eerie.
It really is. You have two loyal Jewish officers, both framed, both stripped of honor in a public spectacle, both screaming their innocence to a deaf system.
But this is where we have to be careful with that Ottoman Dreyfus label.
Right.
Because while the events look the same on the surface, the machinery underneath, the why and the how, is totally different. And understanding that difference is key to understanding the Ottoman Empire.
Okay, let's unpack that, because usually when we hear a Jewish officer framed in the 19th century, we assume it's violent state-sponsored anti-Semitism. Was that what happened to Carmona?
And that's the nuance the historian Feingold really brings out. In France, the Dreyfus affair was a conspiracy of the high command. The general staff wanted him to be guilty because he was a Jew.
They forged documents, they covered it up.
It was malicious, systemic, and driven by an ideology of hate.
And in Turkey?
In Turkey, it wasn't a grand conspiracy against the Jews. It was just rot.
Rot.
Corruption. Incompetence, indifference. The Ottoman government at this time was absolutist and, as the contemporary sources described it, rotten. They didn't frame Carmona because they hated Jews specifically. They convicted him because the legal system was broken.
So the judges were lazy or bribed.
Or they just wanted the case closed. Is it the difference between active malice and gross negligence?
Malignance versus negligence.
Exactly. And you see that difference so clearly in how the public reacted. In Paris, during the Dreyfus trial, you had mobs in the street. You had people shouting, "Death to the Jews!"
It was a visceral, violent explosion of hatred.
Yes. And in Adrianople or Constantinople,
Silence.
total silence. There were no anti-Jewish riots over Carmona, no mobs. In fact, the Ottoman state actively prevented that kind of thing. They censored the press heavily. They wouldn't allow anti-Semitic hate speech to be published.
Unlike the so-called free press of the French Republic, which let the hate run wild.
Precisely. It's a paradox. The authoritarian state actually protected the Jews from mob violence, even while its own corrupt courts were ruining a Jewish man's life.
So Carmona wasn't facing a mob? He was facing something lonelier.
He was facing indifference, and that silence defines his punishment. Dreyfus was on Devil's Island for 5 years, and don't get me wrong, that's hell. But the whole world was watching.
Right, Zola was writing about him, people were protesting.
Right, Carmona, he was in prison for 22 years.
22 years. I mean, try to wrap your head around that. That is an entire lifetime.
It is. He goes in as a young, promising doctor in 1886. The world completely transforms while he's sitting in a cell. He misses the turn of the century. He's essentially buried alive in the Ottoman penal system.
And he didn't just accept it, did he?
No, and that's the heartbreaking part. He requested a new trial immediately. He tried to appeal. He said, "Look at the evidence. There is none." But the Turkish jury was immovable. They just refused to reopen the file.
The system was too corrupt to admit it made a mistake.
Exactly. Too rigid, too proud. So how does a man get out of a life sentence after 2 decades? Usually, the only way out is in a coffin.
But not this time.
In this case, history intervened. The prison doors didn't open because of a lawyer. They opened because of a revolution.
The Young Turks.
Yes, the Young Turk Revolution of 1908. This is a massive historical turning point. This movement, which included the future leader Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, swept away the old corrupt administration of the Sultan.
They wanted to modernize everything.
Everything. A constitution, a clean house. And part of cleaning house is fixing the rotten justice system of the previous regime.
Of course.
So the new government, to distinguish themselves, they authorized a review of old, expired legal processes. Carmona's file was pulled off some dusty shelf where it had sat for 20 years, and when fresh eyes actually looked at the evidence...
Let me guess. It fell apart.
Completely. The legal review concluded there was insufficient proof to condemn him back in 1886. They officially declared it a juridical error.
Juridical error. That is such a cold, bureaucratic phrase for "we stole your entire life."
It's devastatingly polite. But legally, it worked. The sentence was revoked. After 22 years, Dr. Carmona was a free man. His rank and reputation were restored in the military and in the media.
Speaking of media, this is another really interesting layer that the research uncovers. We talked about the silence during the imprisonment. But once he was released, that silence broke.
It did. And this reveals so much about the Jewish community in the Ottoman Empire at the time. You have to realize there were about 300 Judeo-Spanish or Ladino newspapers circulating in the empire.
300, that's a massive media ecosystem.
Incredibly vibrant. Salonika alone hosted about a third of them, and the leading voice was a paper called La Época. The editor-in-chief was a man named Shmuel Saadia Ha-Levi.
And Ha-Levi decides to become the champion of this story.
He becomes the Emile Zola of our story. Just as Zola wrote J'accuse for Dreyfus, Ha-Levi took up the pen for Carmona. In 1909, he published the full review of the trial in his newspaper. He even printed a 48-page booklet detailing the entire injustice.
And he's the one who actually brands them, right? He gives us the title of this deep dive.
He is. In the introduction to his booklet, Ha-Levi references a novel that had been written about Dreyfus. And Ha-Levi writes, quite poignantly, "We also have our Dreyfus, the Ottoman Dreyfus."
That branding is so powerful, it instantly tells the reader, this matters. This is our version of that global event.
Exactly. He wanted the world, or at least the Jewish world, to understand that injustice is universal. But despite Ha-Levi's efforts, the Carmona case didn't spark a massive political movement like Zionism.
Right, because of that indifference we talked about.
Yeah,
Dreyfus radicalized Theodore Herzl. It changed the map of the Middle East. Carmona's release was, news for a while, and then people moved on?
Pretty much. He returned to Adrianople, and he was largely forgotten by the general public. There was no movement, just a tired man going home.
And that brings us to the human cost. Because we can analyze legal systems and revolutions all day, but at the center of this is a human being who suffered. What do we know about the man who walked out of that prison in 1908?
Visually, he was a wreck. The sources describe him vividly. White hair, strange spots on his forehead. They say his face bore the marks of suffering and pain. He wasn't the dashing young officer anymore.
He's a broken old man.
He was. And there are so many unknowns in his story. We don't know his parents' names, where he studied, but there is one relationship that really stood out to me in the research. Dr. Ottoman.
Dr. Ottoman. Who was he?
He was a Jewish doctor who treated Carmona while he was in prison. He actually died before Carmona was released, so they never got to celebrate his freedom together. But there was a deep bond there.
The text mentions that Ottoman confessed to knowing exactly what Carmona was going through.
Yes. That line carries so much weight. It implies a shared trauma. Perhaps Dr. Ottoman had also faced professional discrimination, or maybe he just knew how dangerous it was to be a minority in that military hierarchy.
A kind of unspoken understanding.
Exactly. They understood each other's pain without needing to speak it.
And speaking of pain, there's one detail from the very beginning of his imprisonment that I can't get out of my head. It's when he's first arrested. He's being transported from Adrianople to Constantinople for the trial.
This is the emotional core of the story for me. He knows he's in trouble. He knows he might never come back. So he asks the guards for one favor before they leave the city. He wants to stop at the cemetery.
Not just to pray.
No.
Yeah.
Specifically, he goes to visit the grave of his only daughter. She had died at the age of 18.
Wow. So before any of this legal nightmare even starts, he's already a grieving father who has buried his child.
Exactly. He's lost his legacy. Now he is losing his freedom. It just frames the entire 22 years in a different light.
Yeah.
He wasn't just sitting in a cell. He was sitting in a cell with that grief.
And despite coming from a family of rabbis with influential relatives in Constantinople,
They couldn't save him. They were powerless. The inertia of the Ottoman bureaucracy was stronger than their influence. It just shows how helpless an individual is against a corrupt state.
so when he finally got out, there was a meeting at the Ministry of Justice, right? An official apology.
An apology, yes,
Yeah.
but a hollow one. He was interviewed there, and the sentiment recorded was that it was simply too late.
Too late.
The state can say, we regret this, they can revoke the sentence, but they can't give a man back his 30s and 40s. They can't give him back the career he lost.
It really challenges the whole idea of justice being served. We like to think that exoneration fixes things. But here, the truth came out and Carmona was still destroyed. The damage was irreversible.
That's the heavy reality of it. The Ottoman Dreyfus got his name cleared, but he never got his life back.
It is a sobering story, but one that completely changes how we look at that era. We spend so much time on European history, on the active anti-Semitism of France or Russia. Seeing this different flavor of injustice, this rotten indifference, is really eye-opening.
Absolutely. It shows that injustice doesn't always look like a riot or a pogrom. Sometimes it just looks like a quiet, bureaucratic room where good men are simply ignored for decades.
Now, for those of you who want to verify the evidence for yourselves, and we really recommend you do because there's so much texture in the original work, Professor Reuven Feingold's research is the absolute place to start. But there are other key sources referenced that are worth mentioning.
Right. To get the broader picture of the community, you should look at The Jews in Palestine in the 18th Century by Jacob Barnai. And for the specific narrative we told today, there's a piece called Dr. Carmona, The Ottoman Dreyfus by M.G. Elimelech.
And for listeners interested in that vibrant media landscape you mentioned, that statistic about the 300 newspapers blew my mind.
For that, you have to look for Shmuel Sayadia Halevai's work, El Dreyfus Ottomano. And for the big picture history, French Jews, Turkish Jews by Aaron Rodrigue, and The Jews of the Ottoman Empire by Stanford J. Shaw are the essential texts.
We'll have those listed for you. It's a rabbit hole worth going down, especially if you're interested in how media and justice intersect.
There is always more to uncover. History is never as simple as we think.
Dr. Carmona's story was silent for a long time, but I'm glad we could amplify it today. Thank you so much for having been with us. Do not forget to subscribe for free to the channel, and from now on, we invite you to follow the next episode of our channel.